It was one of those chilly October mornings in upstate New York, the kind where even the layers of blankets and a steaming cup of coffee couldn't fully shake the cold from your bones. I had just come back inside from walking the dog, and I stood in the kitchen watching the mist rise from the mug I cradled in my hands. The kids were still asleep upstairs. The house was silent, apart from the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional pop of the old wooden floor as it adjusted to the weather. My name is Laura Miller, and that day was the start of something I never could have imagined. My husband, Daniel, had left for work earlier than usual. He was an engineer, often on call for unexpected emergencies. I barely heard the door click shut before drifting back into a light sleep earlier that morning. We'd been married for over a decade, and although we weren't the starry-eyed couple we once were, we had built a solid life together. But lately, I couldn't ignore how distant things felt. We barely spoke outside of logistics. Who's picking up the kids? Who's paying the bills? What's for dinner? The warmth between us had been cooling slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it was just gone. I didn't dwell on it. I had errands to run and a client meeting that afternoon. I'm a freelance interior designer, mostly working from home, balancing motherhood and my career. That day, I had scheduled a consultation with a new client who had just moved into town. He was referred by a mutual friend, and all I knew was his name, Brian Carter, and that he was recently divorced. When Brian arrived, I opened the door to find a man in his late 30s with soft blue eyes, a neatly trimmed beard, and a calm, disarming presence. He had a quiet confidence that didn't come off as arrogant, just sure of himself. We shook hands, exchanged a few polite pleasantries, and got to work. His house was beautiful but empty, like a stage set waiting for a story. As I walked from room to room, taking measurements and asking questions, I noticed how attentively he listened. Not just to the design suggestions, but to the spaces in between, the parts where I shared little things about my day, or my kids, or the town. He asked questions not just about furniture styles or color palettes, but about my opinions, my ideas. It had been a while since someone looked at me like I was more than just a mom or a wife or someone managing a schedule. He saw me, and I wasn't sure how to feel about that. We wrapped up the meeting after an hour. Brian thanked me with a warm smile and offered to walk me to my car. It was a small gesture, but kind. He didn't say anything out of place, didn't flirt, didn't cross any lines. But as I drove away, I felt a strange flutter in my chest that lingered longer than it should have. Over the next few weeks, I worked more closely with Brian on his home. He wasn't just a client anymore. We'd talk on the phone, text about paint samples and flooring options, but eventually those messages turned into friendly jokes, shared Spotify playlists, and stories from our pasts. He told me about his divorce, how his wife had slowly grown emotionally unavailable, how they tried counseling, how they drifted apart despite loving each other once. It felt hauntingly familiar. One Friday evening, I stayed later than usual at Brian's place finalizing furniture placements. The kids were with my sister for a sleepover, and Daniel had texted saying he was stuck at work for a late project. Brian offered to order pizza, and we ended up sitting on the floor of his newly decorated living room, eating and laughing under the soft light of a floor lamp I'd picked out just 2 days earlier. There was a moment, quiet, subtle, when he looked at me and said, "You bring life into this place, Laura." I didn't realize how much I needed that. I felt something shift. I smiled, but my heart twisted. I knew what that warmth meant. I stood up and thanked him for dinner, saying I should get going. He didn't try to stop me, didn't push any boundaries. But as I reached the front door, he said softly, "You deserve to feel seen." I drove home in silence, the hum of the tires on the road drowned out by my own thoughts. That night, I crawled into bed beside Daniel. He was asleep, his back to me. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The next morning, I woke up early to make breakfast. As I stood by the stove flipping pancakes, I felt a presence behind me. For a moment, I smiled, thinking maybe Daniel had gotten up early too. Maybe we were starting to reconnect. But as I turned around, I saw the kitchen was still empty. No one was there. But that feeling of warmth, of being noticed, of presence, it lingered. And I knew, without question, it wasn't my husband. It was the memory of Brian's words. The emotional connection that had grown between us like a vine slowly winding its way around a post. I hadn't done anything wrong, not technically, but emotionally, I was standing at a crossroads. I loved Daniel. He was the father of my children, my partner through thick and thin. But we were distant islands now, passing each other like ships with no lighthouse in sight. That day, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I needed to talk to Daniel. Not about Brian, but about us. About the space that had grown between us. That night, after the kids were in bed and the dishes were done, I sat him down and said, "Daniel, when's the last time we really talked?" He looked confused at first, then guarded. "We talk all the time." "No, I mean really talked. About how we feel. About what we want. About whether we're happy." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I thought we were just surviving. Isn't that what people do when life gets busy?" I felt tears sting my eyes. I don't want to just survive. I want to feel alive. I want to feel loved. We talked for hours that night. Cried. Got angry. Confessed things we'd been holding in for too long. I told him how lonely I'd been. He told me how he thought I didn't need him anymore. How he felt pushed away by my independence. We agreed to try counseling, to fight for what we had before it faded into nothingness. As for Brian, I finished the project professionally and wished him well. I told him I needed to focus on my marriage and my family. He respected that. We parted as friends, with no bitterness, just understanding. Months passed. Counseling wasn't a magic fix, but it opened the door to healing. Daniel and I started going on dates again, talking more, laughing like we used to. Slowly, that warmth I'd felt from someone else began to reappear between us. The truth is, sometimes emotional connections sneak up on us when we're at our weakest. It doesn't always mean we're bad people. It means we're human. But the real courage lies in confronting the cracks in our own lives, rather than escaping through someone else's light. Today, when I feel warmth behind me in the kitchen, it's Daniel wrapping his arms around me while the coffee brews. It's the kids running in from school and shouting about their day. It's the family we built, imperfect, but real. And that, more than anything, reminds me what love is truly made of.